Welcome to 28.5, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and support and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode.
Hey, Becca, how's it going?
Hey, Sid, what's up? It's week one. It happened. It's over. It was awesome. What'd you think?
It was awesome. I was in heaven watching women's basketball, watching the college game again. Obviously, the WNBA season was awesome this year, but I really think we're headed into an NCAA season that's going to be unforgettable. And I think opening day was really a day that set the tone.
Absolutely. You could tell it was a lot of first game jitters for folks trying to get back in the flow of the game and just chemistry wise. It's still so early, but man, it was just good to see shoes squeaking and the ball bouncing. It was a lot of fun for sure.
Absolutely. So today we plan to cover just that. We want to cover the opening day. We've got some post-game analysis, things that Becca and I both saw. We watched a ton of games on opening day, so we're excited to give the debrief there. We're also going to cover some matchups that are happening this coming Sunday. And like I said, we're jumping right into this thing. I think this first week, 2 weeks of women's college basketball season is going to be right there on pace with where we left the season off last year. And we're really just jumping right into it. So it's going to be a fun weekend. And really on Sunday, a lot of those matchups are taking place. So we want to highlight some of those. Let's start from the top, Becca, and jump into some of those games that we watched on opening day and hit some of that analysis.
Yep, sounds good. So our first one we're going to deep dive into is going to be the USC versus Old Miss game. USC won a nail biter in Paris, 68-66. I think we called it that it was going to be a good game, but it was absolutely going to be close. As I mentioned previously, some first game jitters for sure. You normally can tell that by the pace of the game, quick, fast turnovers, maybe some bad shot selection, running and gunning. That was definitely the first at least 3 to 4 minutes. In total, USC turned it over 24 times and Old Miss had 15. So I guarantee they're going to be looking into that. USC was led by Juju Watkins, led the team with 27 points, and Kiki had 13 rebounds. So the stars showed up, right? We have our Stanford transfer and Juju kind of doing what they do. USC as a whole, I think, was probably pretty upset with their gameplay. It wasn't where they wanted to in the standard they wanted to set. Looking into some post-game press conferences, and Coach Gottlieb from USC was like, lots to learn, fought back. When they took the lead, we can get better. There's 3 new starters into the starting 5, so chemistry it doesn't come when you're up by 30. It comes when stuff's hard. So definitely need to approach the game with a better mindset. So from a USC perspective, it was a little messy. It was a lot of excitement. And I think it was just overall them trying to still gel together. Sid, what do you think about USC from that game?
I think you hit the nail on the head at the very beginning here. Those first game jitters. It's a little bit different too because they're overseas. They're in Paris, opening the season up against Ole Miss. To me, you can't pick and choose the nights that you want to be great. And if USC really wants to be great this year and really be that powerhouse program they're capable of being and have been in the past, you can't pick and choose. And it's going to bite them at some point if they continue to do that. Not knocking Ole Miss, though. I thought Ole
Absolutely
Miss
not.
came out and really dictated things from the defensive pressure they brought. They were not afraid. They did not back down. A slow start for both teams, I thought a little bit. Again, first game of the season, that's a big thing at play there. Juju had a really slow first quarter, picked it up in the second quarter, had 12 points in the second quarter, ended the half with 16 points. I mean, she's just that type of scorer where she's eventually going to get in the flow. But Ole Miss, to me, I thought was the topic of conversation. I think they're going to be playing in the SEC this year, and I think that they're going to be a tough team to beat in that conference. I think that conference is going to beat them up a little bit. But I think Ole Miss is going to upset some teams also this year. And what Coach Yo does is is fun to watch because she's so energetic. You can tell her players want to play for her. I was almost mesmerized at how they brought that defensive pressure. And we're talking against some really high achiever scorers in Juju and Kiki. And yeah, they still go off and have their points and still had big nights for both of them. Iria Finn had 22 and Juju had 27. So when you look at that, that's a ton of scoring from those two. They didn't necessarily shut them down, but they made every shot difficult. And I think that's promising for Ole Miss, if you ask me. If they're able to bring that defensive pressure and shut down scores throughout the season and even get better at that, then they're going to be a tough team to beat down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. Ole Miss's leading scorer for the night was KK Deans with 19. She came back 7 months ago. She tore her ACL. So she had a goal to get back. She worked her tail off to get back. She's tough. She's competitive. She plays with passion. Coach Yo is, as you mentioned, the energizer. You know, she'd be so fun to play for sure. She in her post conference was like, we had two goals that we really had to focus on that we did not get. One was win the boards, and they lost the boards by 5. The second one was win the 50-50 balls. In the beginning, USC was getting to the balls first, and it's hard to get back in the game when you're making mistakes and having turnovers, and you have such a high profile players such as Kiki and Juju that can score, that those 50-50 balls are really, really the money there. So obviously it's a learning curve for all the teams that are playing, but Coach Yo is going to go back, take that film, and just make them better. And their defensive pressure was absolutely on point. One other thing I wanted to add is Ole Miss's top returning scorer, Madison Scott, had a quiet 14 points, but I mean, I think that's awesome to see other people coming in, stepping up. The supporting cast is really there, and have KK Deans back. I mean, that's awesome. It's going to be a nice 1-2 guard combo there that Ole Miss is going to be a problem for sure.
I totally agree. They got down by 15 early in the third quarter, and this team didn't go away. They kept battling, they battled back, and it just shows what they want to bring this year and the toughness that they have. That in-your-face mentality is something that's hard to compete against day in and day out, and they definitely bring that. So I'm really looking forward to watching Ole Miss play more this year. I thought that was a really good opener for them. And if you look at USC, they win the game. They didn't do maybe as well as they wanted to, but they did do a lot of good things. One of the big things that stuck out to me was the ability to knock down free throws. And
yes.
if they didn't do that, they'd have lost the game, hands down. So you look at Juju, and she's always been able to get to the free throw line. It's a big reason why she's able to put up the numbers that she puts up and the points that she puts up. She went 10 for 12 from the free throw line. Kiki went 8 for 11 from the free throw line. In total, they went 23 for 29 from the free throw line, which is nearly 80% from the line. So right there, you look how close this game was. They don't make the free throws that they made, and they lose this game. So I think that shows, from a scorer mentality, some of the maturity there for those two to be able to knock down free throws. And to me, it allowed them to win the game. And I think also you mentioned it too. You can look at that rebounding column and the box score, and 9 times out of 10, not quite foolproof, but pretty close, that team that wins the glass wins the game. And I thought that also was a big difference, especially down the stretch. They were able to grab some of those rebounds that really mattered. And at one point, I was kind of pulling for Ole Miss. Starting the season with that upset, that momentum would have been huge for them. But it's good to see USC stick it out. We want USC to continue to have a good season. It's good for the game. It's good for the Big Ten. But man, it was a close one down the stretch there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you saw in those last couple minutes, maybe execution, and they had timeouts where they wanted to draw up certain plays to get a certain read, to get a good look, and that maybe that just didn't pan out appropriately. Just, it's early. There's jitters. There's, making sure people are set up the right way. Screens are being set. People are getting the right spot. It's still just, it's all like an excitement brain fog going on that I definitely think they're going to get better at.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's transition here to game number 2 for the day. That was UCLA versus Louisville. UCLA wins this game 66-59. Very low scoring game, and maybe not as exciting as the first game, but really a lot of good talent on the floor. Do want to highlight that Kiki Rice was out with a shoulder injury. UCLA is going to go as Kiki Rice goes. But we're going to highlight this in a second. I'm going to let you highlight it, Becca, because you love their post player. They had somebody really that stepped up. And I think that's going to be something we're going to highlight here. But I thought Kiki being out was something that was a little bit unfortunate. I wanted her to take the reins a little bit this year and have a big opener, and for her to be out with a shoulder injury, it was kind of disappointing, but it was what it was. And then Louisville, they had no Jada Curry. So she has a hamstring injury and she wasn't able to play either, which is one of their main guards there. So really both teams having two of their star players out to start the season, a little bit different, but all in all, UCLA was able to pick up that win. What did you see in this one, Becca?
Man, I saw a 6'7" confident post player by the name of Lauren Betts that can pretty much do it all. She had a really strong outing, led the team in points, rebounds, assists with 18 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 assists. And I mean, she just was unstoppable. It's awesome when you're 6'7", right? Like a lot of people are, oh, you have the height, but it's even more appealing and just dominant when you're able to handle the ball, make plays, make moves. She had some nice up and unders that she would just turn face up, then go up and under. And at first I was like, she's got to be stuck. She's going to be stuck. It's a turnover. And then she'd come out and make a move that was just, it wasn't even like a questionable move. It was like a confident move. And it was interesting afterwards. She had mentioned they're going to make some mistakes, but it's starting with communication for them. That everybody's just trying to figure it out right now. And she's feeling more confident coming into this season. She put in the work in that preseason and it's given her all the confidence. And I will just say that was beyond obvious, especially having Kiki Rice out. That pressure switches to her or anyone else on the team. And it's just who's going to rise up and show up today for this big time game. I think Coach Corey Close, she also had mentioned a few things like, turning the ball over, didn't get the type of effort that they wanted tonight by handling the ball. They took up some space. It wasn't full blown execution. And that might be because Kiki Rice was out. All in all, not the matchup we wanted to see, as both teams had a major player out, but Lauren Betts, man, she's going to be something to definitely look forward to and complement with Kiki at the wing.
She had this post move during that game. I think Rebecca Lobo might have played it twice. She was so impressed and was giving her so many compliments on how she just is that IQ'd, smart post player. She's very patient. And I mean, she backed a girl down and spun off of her and had a little baby hook down the center, and it was just smooth, so that was really fun to watch. And I mean, she's got that big body. She's got a size advantage against probably most girls she's going to play this year. So to see that control and how she can control her body and finish like that was pretty impressive. And I think for me also, Tamia Gardner off the bench, she was a huge spark off the bench. She had 15 points. And if you look at a game where they only score 66 and you've got a player that can step in as a sixth man there and score 15, that's an added bonus for you this year. And I think she's also going to be one that might have a bigger season than folks were thinking. She's a junior for UCLA this year. She's 6'3". She's got size, right? She's got the body for it. She's a forward there. So also fun watching her step up and have 15 points there. I thought that was also impressive. And she had 7 rebounds on the night also. So good to see somebody else step up for UCLA and really make a difference for them. On the Louisville side, you saw Taj Roberts step up. And she's a smooth player also.
Freshman.
I mean, yeah, unbelievable. She had 21 points, did not play like a freshman. And I think that's promising for Jeff Walz and her future there at Louisville. And they really needed it with Jada Curry being out and having a freshman step in like she did. That was fun to watch and good for her. I think she is another one that has a promising season in front of her.
Yeah, absolutely. Williams also had a nice, 7 rebounds, 9 assists. So, I mean, picking up where maybe some other people couldn't. But it was interesting to me to hear Jeff talk after the game, Coach Walz at Louisville. He was very mellow tone, very it's so early. We are the type of team. We have a lot of new kids. They got to buy into the system. As we've said with all these other teams, got to learn to gel, but especially for this team because they have a lot of young new talent coming in. They just want to approach it one game at a time, not look too far ahead. And he even said, it's not always about how tough you are. It's about the heart you have. And I thought it was good to see his perspective. But I mean, that's just something we always say to even our kids we're coaching now in the middle school level, right? You got to be there and want to do it. It's got to be something you want to be good at. So both teams are gonna get back to the drawing board, put in some work, and get some kids back healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to take us into game three?
Yes, game three, the return of the national champ. South Carolina played Michigan. They ended up beating them 68-62. This game was way closer than I would have
Yes,
ever thought. I honestly was on pins and needles. And then what it was like the last minute, maybe like the last 3 minutes, it was legit close. It was a possession or 2 point game. I was really shocked by this. First, I'm just gonna say, obviously, South Carolina, experienced team. They had Chloe Kitts in the post. She was kind of always the four last year to Cardoza, their big post player who graduated. So seeing her come back in, getting her double, 19 points, 14 boards, awesome. The eyes are really on her to kind of show up as an experienced post player to bring it back and set the tone. So good to see her get rolling and going. I do think following up from the game, it was like we weren't ready to go. We will be. A lot of the things that her and Dawn both said were, yeah, this is something. It's either we take and we're motivated by it, or and they didn't even say it, or it was like this will change going forward. We're gonna use this. We're gonna watch film. We're gonna get back in the gym and get better. So I mean, honestly, I think it's a lot of different people stepping in for South Carolina, playing new roles. So she just mentioned some lack the experience, even from experienced players. So this being the first game, I think was kind of a blessing for them, honestly. I mean, Michigan, they came out. They didn't really maybe expect much from Michigan, but Michigan brought it. I'm going to have
absolutely.
you touch on South Carolina before we jump into Michigan just showing up. But go ahead. What did you think of South Carolina's play?
I give a lot of credit to Dawn because she looks for these big opening games. Last year, Paris for them. This year, she was able to get them into the Vegas game. And that was really a big TNT opener for the season. You've got somebody like Candace Parker who's commentating the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's big for women's sports to have somebody like Candace who's continuing to be known on the women's landscape and to cover the game. So I was really excited to see that, of course. And Grant Hill obviously is just another one of those players that has stayed around the game and commentates. And it's just awesome to hear both of those two former players banter back and forth. And really, if you watched it, it didn't seem like a women's game to me. It just seemed like a basketball game
Mm-hmm.
with the level of talent that was producing the game and talking about the game, and then the level of play I thought was great. I think it shows the parity that's advancing and evolving in the women's game. And I do want to highlight some things from South Carolina to me that stood out. And I think you hit the first one for me was Kits. And I think she really showed a lot of maturity, right? She comes off that national championship win where she wasn't the star player for South Carolina, but you can tell she went to work in the off season and she showed up for this game and she really kept them in it. And she brought the intensity and was all over the boards. And really, I think this could be a huge year for her. And I think she put herself on the map just in this first game more than she was last year. So I thought that was really cool to see her step into that role even from game 1. I think a big thing for me with South Carolina is how deep they are. They are so deep. That was a story last year. I mean, she can put 5 in, 5 out and they never miss a beat. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that separates them from a lot of teams. The first game against USC and Ole Miss, you look at the bench points, not a ton. The second game, UCLA versus Louisville, other than the 15 points that we saw from the UCLA six man there, not a ton of bench points. You look at Michigan, they had 6 points off the bench. South Carolina had 29 points off the bench.
Mm,
It's
that's that.
unbelievable. It's,
But think
yeah,
about like that with that game being that close. Thank goodness they got those 29. And
yep.
it couldn't have been 20. It had to be 29. You know what I mean? That's just how close this game was, but that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And that was a story for them all last year. And Dawn's been able to reload and she's just deeper than everybody. So, she says it in the post game conference, like, I wouldn't choose to be preseason ranked number one. I don't like to target like that. We don't
Mm-hmm.
choose these rankings. And it's the reality that they're going to get every team they play, they're going to get their A+ game. They're going to get all the extra hours of scouting and walking through things in practice and the big circle on the calendar. And that means that you have to bring it consistently day in and day out. You live that at Notre Dame. I lived that at Tennessee. It's a lot of pressure on the players, on the coaches, and the fans expect you to show up every night. And South Carolina has to bear that burden. But to whom much is given, much is expected, right?
Yep.
That's
All
a
year.
yeah, all year. And I think they can do it. They've got a leader in Dawn who knows how to handle that, and she stays so calm and cool and
Mm-hmm.
collected. And I just really respect that about Dawn. I think she trusts a lot in her players and she prepares them in ways that some of these other coaches just aren't doing that. So, and kudos to Michigan. We can jump gears to Michigan really quick here. They actually played South Carolina. Dawn was looking for somebody to play her this opening round. Nobody wanted to play her in this opening week. In
Wow.
Michigan, you give them credit, they step up and they're like, yeah, we'll play you. And
Mm-hmm.
they were able to put themselves on the map a little bit, right? They went toe to toe with the number one team defending champ. And it was a huge opportunity for them. Would have been a giant upset, but not as giant as we thought. They've got 3 All-Americans on their team. Didn't know that. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
we know a little bit more about Michigan.
Right.
I'm going to kick it over to you, and I have a feeling you're going to highlight a player that really showed out in that game that's worth calling out here.
Are we discussing the awesome freshman, Silas Swords?
Yeah,
I mean,
unbelievable.
insane. As a freshman, you are coming into a D1, first time rolling up your rolling the ball out, lacing your laces up, and you're playing the defending national champs, and you put up 27 points and 12 rebounds and look calm as all can be. I mean, that takes guts. She didn't even look phased. She was getting in a rhythm, making her shots, making plays, staying aggressive. I mean, she's a name. Remember Silas Swords because she's the next up and coming thing. Like that, again, not only did she leave a mark on probably anyone who watched that game, but just in the basketball world, right? Like that's WNBA wise, that's overseas wise. And something tells me she's not a one game wonder. If you're going to be able to do that against the hardest, biggest team coming back from a national championship, and I know Michigan probably played with that chip on their shoulder, they have nothing to lose. But I mean, if she plays with nothing to lose every game, I'm kind of terrified for everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought she stepped out there, and like you said, you would have not even known she's a freshman. I mean, she comes in, she's an All-American out of high school. She's the highest ranked freshman to ever come to U of M. So Michigan really got a premier player there, and she showed out and showed it in the first game against South Carolina. She was on the Canadian national team, a player that has been competing at a high level in different ways, but now she gets to show the world a little bit more in the NCAA circuit here, what she's capable of doing. And she was a lot of fun to watch. Kind of quiet, right? Like she wasn't like a
Mm-hmm.
flashy player at all, but all of a sudden she's got 27 points in the game.
Mm-hmm.
The other player I think that's worth highlighting for Michigan is Hobbs. She had 19
Mm-hmm.
points, 8 boards. If those two don't put up the points and the minutes that they put up, Michigan isn't even in that game. So I think that's a big call out there. Again, they only had 6 points off the bench. So kudos to those two players for putting the game on their back and putting Michigan on the map.
Yeah, I will just add Michigan as a team took 71 shots. Those two players took 43.
There it is.
Some of these other players, one had 9, and then the other ones were like 3, 2, 4, all just shot attempts. So they are the motor. They are going to be the ones that have to step up. Now it's going to be interesting to see with these two players who joins them, who comes along. It was absolutely amazing to see Michigan just in general compete. That's what I think I was most impressed by, just because you do preseason stuff and it doesn't, no games really matter until they're played, right? Anybody can say anything, but from seeing Michigan's preseason game to this one, I mean leaps and bounds. They came in ready to go, taking swings, and man, they made a mark. That was a lot closer than I would have ever thought. So props to Michigan for coming out there and just doing their thing.
Closing remarks on this one for me. If I'm Dawn and I'm a part of the coaching staff at South Carolina, Pow Pow needed to step up.
Mm.
She needed to take that game over. She's been in these situations before. She was quiet down the stretch to me. She needs to step up and be that leader for them. She's capable of it. We all know she's capable of knocking down that 3 ball, but she can get to the rack. She needed to be that voice, I thought, and I didn't really see that out of her. So I think that's something to note. Not saying she's not capable of it. I'm hoping she brings more of that throughout the season. And then the other thing to me, if I'm South Carolina and I'm going back and I'm watching that film, they were so stagnant against that 2-3 that Michigan threw out there.
Yep.
Michigan comes out in a 2-3 zone, and you just kind of watch South Carolina not really cut and flash to open seams, didn't really put much pressure on them. It slowed the game down, and that's what Michigan was trying to do.
Absolutely.
If they would have went man and tried to go toe-to-toe with South Carolina in a transition fast-paced game, they'd have got smoked. But it was very clear to me that Michigan came in there with the scouting report and the game plan. We're going to sit in this zone. We're going to slow them down. And that's basketball 101. They did it. And I think that's something that South Carolina needs to be conscious of. They're going to get teams that throw a zone at them, and how can they continue to put the pedal to the metal and put the pressure on it, even when a team's sitting in a zone. And I hate that when I'm coaching too. I'm like, I want to get up and down and run. Come on, play a traditional man us up, try to go athlete to athlete with us, but it's not the reality of the game. Michigan couldn't go athlete to athlete with South Carolina, so they sit in a zone, they slow it down, and it worked to their advantage. They were in it in the stretch. And I think that's something Dawn's working on that in practice the next couple of days, is how do we keep the tempo going and keep the flow going and actually cut and move against the zone.
Yep. Hey, Sid, super side topic. When you played, did you like to play against a zone or no?
It's a good thing when a team's zoning, because if we can move the ball, flashing those seams, get the ball inside, turn opposite, that opposite wing is open a lot. So as a 3-point shooter, not opposed to the zone. As a coach now, I much prefer man-to-man, straight-up basketball. Yeah, I don't know. I'm indifferent on it. As a shooter, I'm not opposed to being 2-3 zoned. How about you?
I absolutely loved when people played zone against us.
There you go.
I absolutely loved it. Just the flashing and moving and high to low to, ball is on one wing. I go screen the opposite wing, call for a skip pass, get him I absolutely loved it. It was like Christmas time. I was like, okay, this is going to be what it is. So as coaching, yes, I completely agree with you. It stinks, but as a player, you love it for sure. Okay.
Let's jump into some games we have coming up Sunday. There's some big Sunday matchups that we want to highlight. We're going to try to pick them again. We went 3 for 3 on opening day.
I don't know if we want to keep this record rolling. I'm nervous.
I know. We thought South Carolina was going to beat Michigan by more. That one, I think, was a close one, closer than we thought it was going to be, but we did go 3 for 3. So let's see how we can do today. The first one that we're going to highlight is Duke versus Maryland. So Duke is number 11 right now, Maryland 18 in the AP polls. The game is noon Eastern time on Sunday. Just some high-level notes here around Duke. They beat Radford 89-36 on opening day. They beat Liberty on Thursday, so they're off to a strong start here. They're coached by Kara Lawson. She is a name for women's basketball. She's been around for a long time now. She's 43 years old, so she's not as seasoned as somebody like Gino or some of these coaches that have been at the head spots for a while, but she's been at Duke since 2020. She was the assistant coach for the Boston Celtics in 2019, played in the WNBA for 12 years. She was an ESPN broadcaster, covered a ton of games. She covered our games. I know, Becca, when we were in the Final Four, she was one of the main broadcasters then, and she was a Lady Vol from 1999 to 2003. And I'll tell you what, those Lady Vols love some Kara Lawson. She was a point guard, number 20 for them, and she's a legend on campus, a torchbearer for the Vols. So really cool to see her stepping up at Duke and has put Duke back on the map. And they beat Ohio State last year in the NCAA tournament, which was a big game for them. It was an upset for them. And I think that they're able to roll off that momentum heading into this year. There is a freshman for Duke, and she went viral this offseason because she can throw it down. Toby Fournier. And when I say she can throw it down, almost at ease. So I think it's going to be super fun. I'm hoping that she gets in a good dunk at least a couple times this season. We'll be watching for that. So during that game against Radford, that opening game for them, they held Radford to 12 points in the second half. So Duke really bringing a lot of that defensive pressure. Sophomore Jordan Wood had 13 points and 8 rebounds against Radford. She led them in all scoring. And I do want to highlight that Duke is one of 6 ACC schools in the AP Top 25 poll. So the ACC, we haven't given the ACC a ton of love. I think we should.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Notre Dame in there, NC State's in there. There's some North Carolina. There's some really good teams in the ACC, and Duke is one of them this year. It's going to be fun to watch the ACC beat itself up a little bit, and there's going to be a lot of good matchups coming out of the ACC. Switching gears to Maryland. So, like I said, they're ranked 18th in the country, and they beat the UMBC Retrievers 74-32 on opening day, but really not the opening day that Maryland was hoping for. They're coached by Brenda Fries. She's 54 years old, another household name in women's basketball. I feel like Brenda Fries deserves more credit than she gets. She's going to be a Hall of Famer. She's that type of presence on the court. She's been the head coach at Maryland since 2002. She won the national championship in 2006. Do you remember Christy Tolliver?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Man. They were fun to watch. Really fun to watch. Yep. And she's made 3 Final Four appearances. Again, 2006, also in 2014 and 2015. She's been a 2-time AP Coach of the Year in 2002 and 2021. So, I mean, this coach, Brenda Fries, she's done it. She really is an asset to the Big Ten there for Maryland. Some of the Maryland team highlights, they had 22 turnovers against UMBC. Man. And to me, that's a little concerning. Not taking care of the ball. They struggled from the 3-point line. They went 2 for 13. So this is one to me where I think that practice is probably going to be a little tough this week.
Oh, man. Yeah, definitely. I hated those games.
Yeah, exactly. You win by a lot, but you felt like you lost by 10 with the expectations that are out there. And they should be for Maryland. Maryland's a tough Big Ten school. And then I will say that Maryland did bring the D. Brenda, she's really good at mixing her man and her zone defenses. She throws a lot out there from a defensive perspective, hard to scout for, hard to play against. And if I know anything about Brenda Fries, she's going to have her team ready to go and probably working on a lot of things this week. So with that, we recommend watching Duke versus Maryland. Again, it's on noon Eastern time on Sunday.
And with that, let's jump into game 2, where we're going to do South Carolina, who's obviously the preseason ranked number 1, versus NC State, and they are currently ranked 9th. This, Sid, is a Final Four rematch. This is how NC State's season ended last year with a loss to South Carolina. So that game's going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. And this game is going to be all that and probably more. I think there's going to be a lot of hype around it. South Carolina, we've talked about them a lot with their preseason stuff. Obviously just chatted about them. It was a rocky start, maybe not the smoothest transition, but as you mentioned and we have before, Dawn is very calm. She's very confident. You know she's going to back to work, back into the gym, watching game film. So that's kind of high level South Carolina. We've touched on them quite a bit. So now I'm going to jump over to NC State. They played East Tennessee State on Tuesday, where they won. That was their preseason game. They're coached by Wes Moore. He's been at NC State since 2013. Since coming there, his average winning percentage is 75%. I mean, that's a pretty high number for somebody who's been there over 10 years. So obviously Wes has his finger on the pulse of what he needs in his program and his style of play. NC State has also won the ACC tournament 2020, 2021, and 2022. So they're a staple in the ACC in general, very successful in the tournament as well. Last season, as we mentioned, made it to the Final Four, and it was one of the most successful runs in all of the basketball program history for them. So actually, at this game that they played this last week, they're going to be raising that Final Four banner. So very cool for them to see that up in the stands. Always good to see an accomplishment up there and something to, continue to fight for and play for. So jumping into their players a bit, they have James, who's coming off a breakout season. She led the pack with 16.8 points per game while averaging 4.6 rebounds. Madison Hayes, she's a graduate student. She's been chosen on the Cheryl Miller Award preseason watch list, averaging 10 points and 6 rebounds. And then Rivers is also coming off last season, averaging 12 points and 6 rebounds and also almost 4 assists. So that's your standard all around player that's always good to have on your team, just kind of making the plays and that consistency as well. NC State also welcomes 5 new players this season and another top 10 recruiting class. So adding some pieces, have a ton of experience, and coming off of a Final Four season. What do you think, Sid? How's this going to go?
I love it because I mentioned earlier the parity in the women's game. It's not just the UConns, the Tennessees, now the South Carolinas. I mean, we've got these other schools that are capable of making deep tournament runs. And when you watch the men's tournament, you have those Cinderella stories. You have teams that pop up almost out of nowhere and make these Final Fours. And NC State certainly wasn't that team last year. They were on everyone's radar, but there are more teams that are capable of reaching that Final Four in the women's game than ever. And I think that is awesome. I hope NC State continues to build what they're building. And when you look at this, having a top 10 recruiting class, that only helps. So you like that for the ACC. You like teams that can day in and day out compete against the Notre Dames and the Dukes and the North Carolinas. Throw NC State in there, and that's a stronger conference. And look at this. They get to turn around and have this grunge match against South Carolina and again try to solidify who they are as a program in this matchup. And I think it's going to be a fun one on Sunday. Like I got this one ready to go, queued up. I'm going to be popping some popcorn and looking forward to watching these two teams battle because it's going to be a battle. They're fast-paced teams. They like to get up and down, well-coached teams. Both teams are really going to be well prepared from a scouting perspective, and that makes it all the more better to watch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You bet your butt that if a team knocked you out the year before, not only
Ooh.
are they already a target, but then you just saw an unranked Michigan take them down to the wire, have it be a close competitive game. And we've talked, Dawn is an amazing coach. She's going to get them right. She's going to make sure they're learning and understanding. But just from NC State's perspective, it's like go time. It's like open season. We got a shot. We got a shot now to redeem from last year. And I mean, if I was NC State, I'd be like, don't worry, Michigan. We're going to bring it to. We'll do this for you as well. You know, you kind of laid the foundation. Let me just add a little crack to that. So I think it'll be an absolutely awesome game. What a great matchup just to have early on in the season in general.
Yeah, and it's one they can put on their notch if they're able to knock South Carolina off. It only helps them come postseason. Yes, it's early in the season here, but you beat number one South Carolina at any point in the season. That's only going to help you with the selection committee and help you get that higher seed. So opportunity for them. And again, South Carolina, they're going to get everyone's A+ game. They've got to do some adjustments from last game and be ready to go. Another one we want to highlight on the quicker side here is Baylor. They're ranked 12th right now versus Oregon. So this game is on 9 o'clock Eastern time. It's that West Coast Oregon team now in the Big Ten versus Baylor. And Baylor has really had that tradition of women's basketball. You saw what Kim Mulkey was able to do down there. Brittany Griner, they had the star power down there. Baylor has maintained as a pretty good program. And then you've got Oregon, who had the Sabrina Ionescu and also bring that women basketball hype. I'm excited to watch this one also. Oregon not ranked right now, but if they're able to knock off a 12 Baylor, might put them in the top 25. So it's a good opportunity for them. Want to backtrack a little bit before we jump into our fourth game we want to highlight and pick them really quick here. So
okay,
number 11 Duke versus number 18 Maryland. Who you got?
I got Duke. I got Duke by like 10 to 15. I know we're not getting that specific, but I just feel like Kara Lawson, last season there were glimpses of like the steady consistency that they needed and the expectation of her program. So I think she has that fine-tuned and ready to go this year. And yeah, I'm going to say it's a nice 10 to 15.
I'm going to go with Duke also just based off of the not so great start that Maryland had. Heading into this season, I think I would pick the upset. But having watched Maryland a little bit here, I wasn't all that impressed, and I was impressed with Duke. And I think, to your point, Kara's got them ready to go. They're driving a little bit more of a consistent approach to things, and I think that really matters. So I'm going with Duke also. What about South Carolina versus NC State?
I am going to go with South Carolina. I just think Dawn is going to have a lot of time in the film room with her team and a lot of perfect practices where the things in the film room will be highlighted, discussed, worked on, and put into their minds as this is what you need to do every possession of every game. Because as we mentioned before, people are in different roles and not really knowing, and they're experienced, but not in those roles and not in the types of leadership roles specifically. So I think South Carolina.
I'm also going South Carolina. It's going to be hard for me to ever pick against them with how deep they are. I mean, really, it matters. I think this one's going to be really close, though. NC State wins, and I'm not going to be surprised. I think they're very capable of doing it. Wes Moore's a great coach. Their team is tested at this point. They want this game. This is that grunge match we were talking about. But the depth of South Carolina is going to be so hard for anyone to beat this year. So I'm going South Carolina also. And then Baylor versus Oregon. Who do you got?
I'm gonna go Baylor. I'm gonna go Baylor. I just think Oregon's preseason game that was like 93-63. I'm gonna go with Baylor.
I'm going Oregon.
I almost did.
And we got to differ a little bit here.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I'm going to go Oregon with this one. I think it could be a really good upset for them early in the season. So why not? Let's go for it. Let's go Oregon. Let's see what you can bring. And then let's
live a
little bit. Let's jump into game 4, the fourth game we wanted to highlight here.
Game 4. This one is near and dear to my heart. It is Notre Dame, number 6 versus Purdue. It's an in-state rivalry game. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think Notre Dame's program and Purdue's program are in a completely different scenario setup than they were back when. I'm going to highlight, but I think everybody just remembers the 2001 national championship game when Notre Dame played Purdue and Ruth Riley is up there and she hits the clutch free throws just with seconds remaining to lead them to where they win their first national championship. It was a very dramatic game, one that just, tugs on your heart if you're a Hoosier. I think being from Indiana, I watched this game. I was mesmerized by it. Ruth Riley with her headband knocking down the free throws. It was just absolutely awesome to see. So do you remember where you were, or did you watch this game?
Oh, absolutely. I remember being in my living room when I was 12 years old, I think at that point. It was on my birthday when they won. And as a young girl watching this and watching Ruth Riley step up and knock down the free throws, and it was a special moment for Notre Dame and for Indiana basketball in general.
Yes.
And 2 Indiana schools going at it. I thought that was pretty cool then, and it's pretty cool now to think about that. So what a legendary game for the women's basketball scene.
Yeah, absolutely. So to highlight, Niele Ivey was in that national championship game. So jumping over to a little bit about ND, Niele Ivey is obviously their head coach. They had their first preseason game against Mercyhurst where they won 105-61. Notre Dame had a couple players out. Sonia Citron, Liza Carlin was out. Kylie Watson was out. Maddie Wesveld was out. So, 4 key players, probably 3 or 4 starters were out, but had plenty of firepower. So it was great to see we had those folks from the bench actually, coming in, distributing, making an impact. And it was just so great to see Olivia Miles back. She opens up her first game back on the floor with a triple double. I know she talked about this. I think she was with a videographer and he had mentioned it to her. Like, wouldn't it be great if your first game back, you got a triple double? And she was like, let's manifest that. And I'm not kidding you. It happens. And then in her postseason or her post game interview, she's talking about it. Olivia Miles is back. And I think anybody who is questioning how it would be or if she'd be full go or how her play would be with Hannah Hidalgo, I think it kind of washes that all out the water. I know it was Mercyhurst, which, they still put up a good amount on us, but we had 5 players in double figures in this game. 5 players. And then we're missing 4 starters. So I think that's that looks good for sure to start the season. And especially going into Purdue, maybe we'll have a few of those starters that were out back and healthy by then to just kind of put the puzzle back together. A little bit about Niele Ivey. Won that national championship in 2001, played in the WNBA for the Indiana Fever, the Detroit Shock, and the Phoenix Mercury. Little fun fact about Sid and she doesn't remember this, but you were there, Sydney. You were
I
there.
swear I don't remember
Yes,
this,
you
but I've had
were.
multiple people saying that I was there. So I don't know.
You had to be.
I was there.
If I find a photo, I'm showing you because you were there. We were on an AAU tournament in Detroit, and we all went as an AAU team, and we sat in the rafters. It was like tickets that day, something to do between games for team bonding. And it's so crazy that I remember her playing and they were yelling like Poison Ivy, for Niele. And it's just wholly full circle when I end up going to college there, and then it's her first year as an assistant coach. So super awesome moment. Shout out Niele. Watched you on the Detroit Shock. Obviously also watched her on the Fever and the Mercury, but we're in person for the game. Sid, you were there too, even though you don't remember. So she was an assistant under Coach McGraw for years and years, won another national championship when Notre Dame did back in 2018. Then she went on to coach in the NBA and work for the Memphis Grizzlies. She was there for a year, and then she came back. And I'm going to tell you just a fun little quick story. When we didn't know Coach McGraw was retiring, the alums all got a text. It was like on a text thread, and it was like, hey, can you please join this like Notre Dame alumni only Zoom meeting? And so we were like, oh, everybody's texting and like, hey, what do you think it is? What do you think it is? What is it? So it was right before she announced it. We all are on the Zoom. There's pictures of us, multiple people you can see in the boxes, right? You're all talking, catching up. Coach comes on. She announces she's stepping down. Talk to us about the program, how much love and compassion she's put into it and the work. And she just wants it to go to the right person. And she's like, and I thought it would be great for you all to see who it is first. And she slides out of the camera and Niele slides in and we all just lose it. So it was so cool just to be
That's cool. That's
involved
really cool.
in that moment. And like, as she's talking about it, and even before she actually announced it, it was like the only person that felt right for it was Niele as she was on staff, but then she had gone to the NBA and you never really know where someone's career and they want to go. But man, it was so cool. And the reaction of everybody just celebrating and being thrilled. And it was alums from every year. So love that they did that for us. And super excited for Niele this season and everything she's doing going forward. Obviously, we have a pretty loaded team this year. All good things there for Notre Dame. But let's jump over to Purdue. Unless, Sid, do you have anything you want to highlight around the Notre Dame, their first game?
Not a ton. I think you hit it. For me, I was most interested in watching Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo step in and play together, and how is that going to work? And I don't think they disappointed in game one. So really looking forward to them playing against a team like Purdue, where there's going to be some more competition thrown at them, and how do they jive and play together? I think we're going to see more of that transpire throughout the season. But I think overall, really good, strong start for Notre Dame.
Yep. Awesome. So obviously, Niele, former player for Notre Dame, we are playing against Purdue, and their head coach is Katie Gerald's former Purdue player. She was there from 2003 to 2007. An amazing player in her own right. She was Big Ten Freshman of the Year in 2004, Big Ten Tourney Most Outstanding Player in 2007. In 2007, she was also an All-American. Recently, this fall, probably within the last month or so, she was inducted into Purdue's Athletics Hall of Fame. So another cool accolade to continue to add. She took over as the head coach of Purdue in 2021. And before joining the Purdue, she was a head coach at Marian University, where she led them to back-to-back NAIA championships in 2016 and 2017. It's amazing at any level to win a championship, but to win back to back and have that impact on the game, it's literally awesome. I'm excited for her, not only where she's come from and where she is now, but where she's going, right? Because once you have that championship mentality and you have the program that's bought in, it's really easy to replicate as long as you get the right pieces. So shout out to Katie Gerald's for that. And honestly, since taking over Purdue, they've gotten to 3 straight postseason appearances and a nice deep run in the WNIT. So Purdue's kind of back on the rebound. They're trying to get back into the NCAA tournament, make an impact, and, get back as that basketball program that they used to be. So exciting to see how this game goes. Purdue's roster, just a little fun fact, they have a pair of sisters from Washington High School, which is here in Indiana, where Sid and I are from. That's also Skylar Diggins High School. It's the Reynolds sisters. And they also have another high school teammate on the team at Purdue, Rashonda Jones. Three girls, all from Washington High School, playing on the same college team. Pretty awesome. Hope to see them do great things as well. I know the younger sister, Mila, was injured last year, so she had to do a red shirt. So excited to see them versus Notre Dame.
Absolutely. And shout out to Katie Geralds. I mean, she's an Indiana kid and has brought a lot to the sport in the state of Indiana. And it's really fun watching her be the head coach at Purdue. And I think it's going to be a tough game, but I'm going with Notre Dame on this one. I think that they win this one by 15.
I'm gonna say a little more. I'm gonna say Notre Dame 20. The fact that Notre Dame was able to put up the type 106 points and not have four of your starters. I don't know if I've ever seen a Notre Dame team kind of that packed with talent, able to come in, compete, and put points up on the board without a lull at all. So, yeah, but I think it'll be a good game, a good in-state rivalry, as we mentioned, and fun to see in general.
Absolutely. I think Purdue has a tough scout in front of them. I'm going to be curious to see what they try to do to counter Notre Dame's scoring ability.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, maybe they're going to throw in a zone to slow them down.
There you go. Yeah, watch that South Carolina game and see what Michigan did there. Absolutely. Do want to mention that UConn, who's ranked number 2 in the country, plays South Florida at 3:30 Eastern time, also on Sunday. I'm going to go with UConn on that one. Hard to pick against Gino there, but a tough game for them. South Florida is going to be able to compete and hang in there and capable of winning that game, certainly. But I think with Paige Beckers and all that UConn brings, that's going to be a tough one for South Florida. Who do you got on that one, Becca?
Yeah, I'm also going to roll with UConn. I'm interested to see just their chemistry and their preparation, right? Every team's that started that we've highlighted and talked about been in the top 10, been a little rocky against their first opponent, somebody a little more competitive than those preseason matchups. So interested to see their overall preparation for the game and kind of how they show up. Absolutely.
So we got a fun Sunday ahead here. I'm hoping
Can't wait. Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we have some barn burners. It's fun to watch some of those games go down to the wire. And one quick plug here, we do want you all to hit us up and ask us some questions. So we have our social medias out there. Hit us up on LinkedIn, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, 28.5 women's basketball. Find us, ask us questions around anything women's basketball related. And we're going to try to field a couple of those questions and bring them on air and answer them and give you the shout out for reaching out. So looking forward to those questions as they come in and hoping we can bring them to the podcast here. And I think that'll be a fun segment for us to do. And with that, Becca, going to go ahead and conclude today's episode. As always, love talking to you. It's great talking women's basketball, and we've got a full season ahead of us and looking forward to Sunday.
Absolutely, Sid. If you want, maybe we just hang out for this game all day Sunday.
There you go.
It's a marathon.
It's a marathon. The game's starting at noon Eastern, and they go all the way till that 9:00 game out there on the West Coast. So it's a packed day Sunday. A lot of good matchups.
I can't wait for it. Another good week of women's basketball is always a good week.
Here we go. Talk to you soon.
All right. See you, Sid.
See you, Beck.
That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow on your preferred podcast platforms to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.